بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله وكفاه صلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله عليكم ورحمته تعالى. Right, we were taking a look at the section of wudu within kitab, or the section Bab al-Tahara, the chapter on Tahara and purification. We're taking a look at wudu. We had covered already that wudu was of 5 different types, really. So there was an obligatory, a sunnah, a fadila, recommended, a permissible, and a forbidden. And we'd kind of gone through the different categories so far, taking a look at the obligatory type of wudu that can be carried out, the masnoon, which means the sunnah type of wudu, the virtuous fadila type of wudu, the mubah, meaning the permitted, just merely permissible. It is kind of interesting, I'll just add, that mubah technically is what they call mustawi al-tarafain. Okay, it's mustawi al-tarafain. It's something which is of equal size. That means there is no virtue in it whatsoever, and there is no kind of like prohibition or inhibition about doing it. It's absolutely the same. So if I was to place this phone over here, or if I was to put it over here, it is exactly the same as far as the rulings of the Sharia are concerned. That does become interesting because in sections like wudu, because surely it couldn't be completely mustawi al-tarafain, because doing wudu is a good thing. It can't be, if it is an absolutely neutralized action, something which has no reward whatsoever and no harm whatsoever. There are some questions, like when you say that with wudu, I would say that it could be slightly problematized, because wudu is an act of worship. Therefore there would be, I think the better way to understand that would mean that if you did wudu, it would be virtuous. However, this situation, the warranting of this situation for wudu is simply neutral. Like for you to, this situation does not demand or does not warrant or does not require a wudu at any level. Okay, so the examples he gives, like dukhul al-amir, and going into the royal type of courtyard, and that's an interesting one that they all quote. Reason being, I don't know why you might think they say that. Why do you think they might say something like going in royal presence? For cleanliness. I think a lot of the times they come from the angle that it's like being in royal presence is awe-striking. So people kind of get all intimidated. So in situations or circumstances of intimidation, it's good to be in wudu, that it will give you that strength to kind of. So that's why I think they generally, that's one of the reasons they do mention generally this thing, like rukub al-bahar, of riding the sea, as in going out to sea and stuff like this. Once again, that was from the permitted actions, as in the permitted circumstances, not the wudu itself, because wudu would be a good thing. You would be rewarded for a wudu. That in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, there is a hadith transmitted that from the good fortune really of a believer is muhafadatuhu ala al-wudu, that his kind of consistency upon wudu, that he stays upon wudu. So being upon wudu all the time is a good thing, if you can do it. It's not like it's not in any way considered like an innovation or considered what the hell, why are you always upon wudu? It's a good thing, but it should not be an obsessive thing. There's a difference. Right. We'll move on to the next section. ممنوعه وضوءان. So if هل تقرأ
وممنوعه وضوءان تجديده قبل صلاة فرض به وفعله لغير ما شرع له أو أبيح.
Alright, okay. Now, the thing is, if a person does wudu for a salah, so right now, let's say we've all done wudu for Isha. Now we haven't prayed Isha. Now we decide, I know, let's do wudu again for Isha. What do you think the ruling of that may be? Meaning, what does mamnu' mean?
Meaning dislike, yeah. It doesn't mean forbidden, really.
It's generally understood as forbidden. And they would take that to mean haram usually. And this is quite an intense thing. That, whoa, haram. What the hell? Like, why is that haram? Like, so what if the person did wudu upon wudu? The reason is, what people don't understand is that first of all it is an innovation. That you are innovating an act which the Prophet ﷺ and the Deen has not taught you. That you have performed a wudu for something, and before you can conduct any action for which that wudu was done, you decide to do the wudu again. So like wudu is not a goal, it is a means. Wudu is not done for itself, it is done for something else. So it is a wasila, not a maqsad. Now if you take a wasila but now don't do anything with it and say, I know, I'm just going to do it again for the sake of it, well, that would be, obviously it would be, first of all, an innovation. It's not you're not taught that in the Deen. Secondly, it would just be israf, you're just wasting water. Thirdly, and I believe this is one of the reasons that Islam has paid great sensitivity to in some matters, and that is matters of psychology, seriously. And I think especially things like OCD, waswasa, these things, they take over a person's life and they destroy a person's life. It will lead many people who take this route of obsessive compulsive behavior, especially neurotic behavior. I mean, there's other, you see, the thing is, obsessive compulsive is on a par with addictions from a psychological perspective. The type of urges that people with OCD have, the same type of urges people with addictions have. Okay, so they're similar, but they're different. Okay, people with addictions are craving something to make an absence go away. They feel like either a low or whatever it is, and they need to raise their state. Therefore, they need to do something, take a particular drug, do a particular thing. People with OCD need to actually push away this compulsion by doing something. There's a difference. One induces, one kind of repels. But they're both very dangerous and incredibly addictive by their nature. So anyway, the thing is that you see that Islam, when it came to matters like this, was very strict. This is why in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that wudu is twice or three times. And he says, and whoever goes beyond that, like washes it 4 times, فَقَدْ تَعَدَّهَ وَظَلَمَ. That whoever washes a limb 4 times has been oppressive and has transgressed. You would think, whoa, it's a bit harsh, like for wudu. You know, people say, look, I'm doing wudu, right? I'm not, did I get that? Oh, damn, I don't know, let me wash it again. Think, all right, well, I've done it 3 times. You know what? Just to be on the safe side, let's just wash it an extra time. That is actually forbidden. You wash your limb once, twice, or 3 times. You do not exceed 3 times. The reason being that the way the deen has been created, first of all, you have to understand that the way the human mind works. The human mind clings to rituals. Clings to them. And there is a huge wisdom in that Allah has made several acts of worship ritualistic. So they will cling to the human psyche, and the human will naturally be consistent in doing them. The problem is that this clinginess, this attachment to the psyche can become overwhelming and can destroy people as well if they become too immersed in it. And this is where you have all these type of like neurotic behavior and all this. And so you see that a hadith saying, look, you do something this much, this much, this much. Where it starts borderlining now, you're becoming obsessive with your ritual. It's ordained haram. So it is quite strict on these matters. And I don't know if you're ever in touch with people, I don't know if Doc, from a medical perspective, but I mean people that I have been in touch with on many occasions with OCD and stuff like this, with waswasa, it has really damaged their lives significantly. That it's not something so easy to, and you understand why then Islam took such a stance against this. Right, okay, the second part was فَعْلُهُ لِغَيْرِ مَا شُرِعَ لَهُ أو أُبِيحَ. Doing wudu for something which is haram or which it is not permitted to do wudu for. Like it is not, when I say permitted, not legislated. Wudu is an act of worship which is a wasila which has been placed for a maqsad, an objective. So for example, salah, nafal, reading Quran, doing tawaf, doing sa'i, doing these type of things, there is wudu legislated. You want to do these things, you do wudu. Wudu is not legislated for certain things. Now, if a person said, so for example, a person said, there's the clear haram things like, oh, I know, I'm about to go to the pub to have a drink, why don't I quickly do wudu? Right, that obviously is clear in it being absurd and why it would be haram. Or I'm about to go to the casino, I might as well feel a bit lucky. Stay in wudu. Right, so that would clearly not be permitted. The other thing is, okay, what about if it was a neutral act, as in an independent act? So this is interesting now. So what if I said, look, I'm about to go to the gym, so I do wudu to go to the gym. What do you think the ruling on that would be? What do you think?
Depends on your intention, surely.
Excellent. But can you expand? What do you mean by that?
Well, say to try and stay in wudu so that when the salah comes in, you can pray it while you're there, or but if it's just for the purpose, just to do your exercise, I guess that's not.
You see, this is very well said. We touched upon something similar when we were doing Kitab al-Salah. The problem is, if this is now, it's between several type of ends. One being an innovation, which would be haram, and one being an act as a means for something else. So if I said, yeah, I'm doing wudu, I'm about to go to the gym, or I'm about to go to work, let me do wudu, or I'm going to the shop, let me do wudu. The question here would be, now just stop, why are you doing wudu why is your wudu coinciding with this action? So why is your wudu coinciding with you going to work, or going to Tesco's, or going to the gym, or going here? Why is it coinciding? Or going to the movies? Let's say, is it? No? All right. So why is it? So why is it coinciding with that? If you said, well, no special reason. It's just that later on, I know in about 2 hours' time there's going to be salah, so I might as well just have my wudu. Or if you said, you know what, I always try and stay on wudu. There's no special reason it's coinciding with this. Even if I happen to be going, let's say I wasn't going to the gym now, I was going shopping, I would have probably still done wudu anyway if I had the time. Then, if the reason that it's coinciding is coincidental, then it is permitted. You can do wudu, because then it's just a coincidence. Like you would have done wudu anyway. I just like to stay in wudu, or the reason is that it may even be recommended. oh, you know what, I might be out and I think it might be difficult, so my salah might get delayed. If I do wudu now, it'll make my salah easier. You'd be rewarded for that. If you somehow started to say, well, the reason it coincides with this, and you began to find some significance with that action, like almost which you're justifying religiously. So if I said, you know what, the reason I'm doing this to go to the gym is because the Prophet ﷺ said, al-mu'min al-qawi ahabbu ila Allah min al-mu'min al-da'if, that the stronger believer is more beloved to Allah than the weaker believer. So whilst I'm doing this, I want to be on a state of wudu, because wudu should go with this. And if I've somehow got some weird religious justification for this coincidence, it is then an innovation and not allowed. Because that is not what the Prophet ﷺ has taught. That is not what the deen has come with. Coincidence is fine. There is no problem in things being coincidental, because you're just, yeah, big deal. I mean, it's just a coincidence, nothing special. The problem is the moment you start thinking there's something special in that non-special thing. Oh, I'm doing it because I'm going to Tesco's. If I was going to Asda, then I wouldn't do it, because Tesco seems to support a Muslim cause. Let's just say that's a bit nonsensical. I don't know about the cause side, whether they support it or not, but I mean, the whole thing is nonsensical. So these things, it's interesting that looks a simple question. I don't know if you ever looked at it from this angle. That's interesting. You know, like from how the Sharia watches all these different angles and gives you answers. It doesn't just, it's a very careful deen. Okay.
You talked about like a neutral act, right? Doing wudu for that. What about like something that's, like, say, a good act? For example, you come into Durus today teaching and you say...
Dars. I mean, we've already done that. It is recommended for several acts, and if you remember, they would say things like, some of the ulama have said things like seeking knowledge. If you were doing wudu for seeking knowledge, some of the ulama have understood that to be a recommended act, because of the ahadith, the way they kind of speak around, oh, the angels placing their wings and doing this and doing that. So, you see, if it was a religious, because seeking knowledge is a religious matter. Religious matters, to be in a religious realm with, like, in a state of purity is fine. Because you're associating religion with religion. You know, like if somebody said, look, I'm going to sit in the masjid, so since I'm sitting in the masjid, I'm going to do wudu.
Say Nav performs wudu for one of his events.
Say that again.
Nav performs wudu for one of their events, al-hikmah events. Specifically for that.
But what if it's a sunnah and you actually think what you're doing is a sunnah, aka wrestling? So I want wudu for wrestling, but my intention is I'm doing it because it's sunnah.
Yeah, but it's not sunnah to have wudu for wrestling. So it would actually be an innovative practice to associate the wudu with it.
To associate wudu with a sunnah act.
Because the thing is that, look, what you can't start doing is mixing things up. Like, you can't, like, the deen has been given incomplete. It's been given incomplete, not incomplete, but it's been given, it has reached us holistically. So the thing is, if we say, okay, we're going to take this action, the Prophet ﷺ said, oh, you should practice martial arts or whatever these arts are, let's say some type of self-defense, or whether it was learning at that time, you know, how to shoot an arrow or do this, or to swim or to do these things. And the Prophet ﷺ in a different hadith has encouraged wudu. So I'm going to just associate wudu with that action. I'm not going to associate it with general things. I'm going to just associate. Then you've got a problem, because you seem to be doing your own type of thing. That was never said. It's different if you just said, oh, in general I want to do wudu, which is a fine thing, which is a good thing. But if you associate it with something specific, you would be asked a question, why this thing? Like, because either the Prophet ﷺ taught you to do wudu with that, or he didn't. So if you're making it specific, then it becomes an innovation. Okay, so that's the problem. Especially with non-religious things. Do you understand? Like, they become like, whereas, like, if they were religious, you could understand there would be some type of evidence to show that. Like I said, like, let's say sitting in a masjid. If you thought, look, I'm going to sit in a masjid, I know, I'll do wudu. It makes sense. Why? Because I'm in a masjid, maybe salat time would come, maybe I'd like to read a bit of Quran, it's the realm of angels and so on. I'd like to kind of be, you know, like I'll be sitting there in a reflective state and so on. It makes sense. But if you said, oh, I'm going to sit in a particular office, I think I should do wudu every time I go in that office. It doesn't really make sense, because here you'd be asked, well, why? Like, why this particular association?
What about if you've got an exam, like, to do wuzu, you feel more comfortable, like, doing the exam?
Yeah, like, I mean, the thing is, you see, that would be fine. That's where we said, like they gave the example, ad-dukhul ala al-amir, that going in a royal presence, it's permitted to do wudu. In some, here he hasn't mentioned, wait, has he mentioned, yeah, he does see, وَشِبْهِهِ مِنَ الْمَخَاوِفِ. He says, and similarities, or in similar situations of fear. You see, exams are like a daunting, at times even a frightening experience for people. Are they going to perform well? Ain't they going to? Being in wudu sometimes makes a person feel more confident in the face of fear, in the face of daunting or challenging situations. Therefore, doing wudu for that is fine. Doing it just for an exam, saying, okay, anybody who goes to a geography exam must be in wudu, all of the exams, no. Then it becomes a problem. Do you understand? Cool. Let's دعنا نستمر. وَالشُّرُوطُ وُجُوبِهِ عَشَرًا. Its conditions of obligation are 10. نعم.
وهي المذكورة في شروط مفروض الغسل إلا أنك تقول والقدرة على الوضوء.
So he does mention that these have already been previously mentioned in ghusl, in the section on ghusl. We've already done that. So he says, except here you would replay, you're not really talking about ghusl, you're talking about wudu. So that's already kind of done. Now,
وأحكامه منقسمة إلى فرائض وسنن وفضائل.
So the rulings of these are now the internal rulings of wudu. So not the external. So far we were looking at like the external rulings of wudu, as in when should wudu be done, what should it be done for, where is it forbidden, where is it recommended. Now we're looking at the internal rulings of wudu, as in where does this action come in wudu, is this necessary, what if you forgot to wash the hand like this, what? So the internal rulings. So وَأَحْكَامُهُ مُنْقَسِمَ إِلَى, so it's ruling split in 3. This tripartite thing, fara'id, sunan, fada'il. Okay, I mean there are other rulings as well actually, and you'll see that where certain actions, and he will kind of mention that as well, which are discouraged in wudu or prohibited, but right now he's looking at these fara'id, sunan, fada'il, that obligation, a sunnah or a fadila, a recommended type of act. نعم.
فمفروضاته 10 النية عند التلبس به واستصحاب حكمها وغسل الوجه كله وغسل اليدين إلى المرفقين وتخليل أصابعهما ومسح جميع الرأس وغسل الرجلين إلى الكعبين وفعل ذلك بالماء المطلق ونقله إلى كل عضو وإمرار اليد مع صب الماء والموالاة مع الذكر.
Shukran. The obligations of wudu. Okay, when you begin wudu, that you have an intention. What does an intention mean?
It's like, you know what you're doing it for.
Okay. Should you say something to kind of to remind yourself that you've got an intention?
No, you don't have to.
You could do. You don't have to.
What do you think?
I think no.
Okay.
Only no reason.
In the morning.
It's in the morning.
Yeah.
So okay. So right, it's actually the thing is, it is actually generally the Malikiya especially were quite critical and condemning really of people verbalizing their intentions. They didn't like this practice and they saw it as an innovation. You don't, this thing that this wasn't from the Sunnah, it wasn't from the teachings of the Salaf, that they would say, oh, and it's not the teachings of normal human beings. And it's not the practice, of normal human beings to say, to verbalize their intentions on, oh, I'm about to sit down now, I'm about to stand up now, I'm about to walk towards the door now, I'm about to do, it doesn't, it's a bit redundant and a bit It's a bit dumb as well. So say that again.
Imagine there's blind people with you.
Yeah. Oh, you mean it's an audible recording like in the movies when they've got the. So the thing is that, okay, that's different, but we're talking about intentions. Intentions should not be verbalized. Don't do that. Not even for salah. Although we've covered salah previously. For salah we did say because salah are many and are similar. So a person could just recall in his mind, like he could say, oh, asr, like this is asr, as opposed to dhuhr, because there's a close overlap and he might have forgotten or she might have forgotten. So to say, oh, this is asr, okay, Allahu Akbar, that's enough. Like imagine it's 4 fard asr. That's to themselves to just recall that, because there's many of them, the salahs, which are similar, just to distinguish them on a mental level. The thing is, for things like wudu, you definitely do not do that. And you don't do this whole, even for salah, this whole, I am making intention to do this, I'm facing the qibla now, I'm praying behind this imam, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. No. And even for Ramadan, you don't verbalize an intention, nawaitu li sawmi ghadin, or whatever it is that they write on the calendars. This is this is not from the sunnah. Okay, none of these du'as those ones, these intentions that they write on the calendars, are from the sunnah. Now, an intention, the ulama say, is this, that if somebody was to stop you and ask you, what are you doing? Your response would be what you were doing. That is like the litmus test for intentions. If somebody was to say, why have you woken up at this time, or why are you eating this food? Oh, because I'm about to fast today. Okay, so you know what you're doing. You know, why are you washing your face and your arms like that? Oh, because I'm about to pray. You've got intention.
Is that an innovation?
What, to ask?
No. Say verbalise your intention.
Yes, it is, because generally the Maliki school have considered it to be an innovation because it is not from the practice of the Sunnah. Some people in other schools of law, like the Hanafi madhab, had said, oh, everybody recognizes this isn't from the Sunnah. They all agree on that. There's no difference in them agreeing that this is not from the Sunnah. The difference is some madhabs have said, oh, if a person's really stuck, and to help them, and maybe they can come out with a certain pattern to say things like this, but the problem is then you end up introducing a whole new practice which becomes part of the deen, as in part of wudu becomes say reading this paragraph, or part of salah becomes saying this paragraph. Now this is not part of salah. This is why I said, yes, even the Maliki recognize where there's an overlap, where the ulama recognize, look, all ulama recognize where there's an overlap, and you're busy doing stuff, you may need to, what they call in Arabic, istihdarul qalb. You'll have to kind of, an istihdarul niyyah, you have to bring to mind, what you're about to do. And a quick way of doing that, how am I praying? Oh, it's asr, 4 rak'ah, okay. Allahu Akbar. And that's fine. But to kind of ritualize the thing, turn it into is what people should avoid, really. Naam. So the niyyah is important. There is a big debate about, does the niyyah have to be right from the very beginning, or by the time you reach the face, because the face is the obligation, an obligatory action. The point is, you should have niyyah in what you're doing. For wudu we're speaking about. There is a debate, by the way, with the Hanafiya who do not accept intention as necessary for wudu. But wastishabu hukmiha, right, that you keep the intention right throughout. It's not that halfway you've forgotten what you're doing, now you just happen to be doing something, you don't know why you're doing it anymore, and then you think, oh yeah, it was right. So there is that debate, because there is this mas'ala. Let's say a person went for a swim. Now whilst he's swimming, all your limbs happen to have been washed, or they've immersed in water. So you've had a good swim, you've come out, oh that was good, alright, cool, let's go. Somebody says, oh it's salah time, says salah time, oh damn, I've left now. Do I need to do wudu? Well, I did have a swim, didn't I? And I suppose when I was swimming my limbs were wet, so I suppose I did kind of wash over all. So here, technically, according to the Hanafi madhab, you would have wudu. and according to the others you wouldn't because you didn't have intention. Okay, and وَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. And Allah says, worship Him being sincere of the deen. Now you cannot be sincere for any action without an intention. You can't be sincere without an intention. That's not sincerity. So na'am, moving on. You must have your intention all the way through. غسل الوجه كله, washing the entire face, and the entire face is there, the whole thing, ear to ear, whatever. I mean, it's common sense, right? غسل اليدين, the hands to the elbows, and they include the elbows. تخليل أصابعهما, and between the fingers, washing that, wiping over the entire head. Now, Allah mentions in the Quran that to wipe over to wipe the head, right? فَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. Now the thing is, wipe over the head. Here, the Maliki have understood that since Allah said that, then it should include the head. Whereas the other schools have said, look, a part of the head is okay. But the Maliki have said, where you see this word being used in the Quran for tayammum, for example, that فَامْسَحُوا بِوُجُوهِكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ, right, that wipe over your faces and your arms. You don't say for tayammum, wipe over a part of your face. Like if I did tayammum like this now, that's not tayammum. Even though you say I wiped part of my face, they would all say you have to go wipe over the entire face. So the Malikiya have problematized here that how can you guys differentiate here then? When Allah says, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, that go over your head, that you've said it's okay to just go like this. Because, Allah is mentioning ru'us, which is the head. So there is this debate between the school of Medina and the other schools, school of Medina being the Maliki school, and the other schools, right, over is the majority of the head at least necessary? And we believe it is, because it's mentioned in the Quran. The only evidence that is used in contrast to that is a hadith of Mughira ibn Shu'bah radiallahu anh, that he transmits that when he was in a journey with the Prophet ﷺ, he saw the Prophet ﷺ at one point. He was doing wudu, and he says he sat down to do wudu, and then when it came to wiping the head, he moved his imama back to about there, and he says he wiped over what was the nasiya. The nasiya is this part of the head. He wiped over the nasiya and the imama. The Hanafiya from here understood that it is permitted to just wipe over the nasiya, and the Hanabila, the Hanbali madhab, understood from this that it is permitted to wipe over the imama. And the Malikiya understood it clearly. Allah. That this was only a journey. The Prophet probably had wudu already. He was doing wudu upon wudu. Chill out, people. The thing is that in a journey, first of all, you always have, in a journey, you have excuses. You have excuses in a journey. Things are made easier anyway. And secondly, what's to say that wasn't a wudu just upon a wudu? What's to say that's why? Hence, whereas in all the other teachings, why do we find it complete then? Why is in no hadith the Prophet ﷺ saying, oh, by the way, guys, you can just do this, like, you don't need to do that, just do this, just wipe over here. Apart from this one transmission where a Sahabi has seen this, the Prophet ﷺ hasn't taught it like that. So that has been the response of Ahlul Medina to these other humble cities. Right, so the point, right?
It feels like 1
What's
It feels like 1 million.
right? No, inshallah.
Oh, it's like half time here.
So وَفَعْلُ ذَلِكَ بِالْمَاءِ الْمُطْلَقِ, using pure water. This really, to be fair, Qadi Iyad has probably put in there just to make the numbers. Qadi Iyad in this book he uses round numbers all the time, always tens, fives, tens. He doesn't just say things like, oh, by the way, this is 7 or this is 6. He only uses round numbers. And obviously it's difficult making round numbers because where are you going to get all the facts from? So sometimes he does conveniently, like he'll bring in certain other conditions from a different part. So everybody knows you have to have pure water or absolute water to do wudu. So he's brought that in as an obligation as opposed to a condition. But I mean, it's all good. Having water move to a limb. Right. This is interesting. It's interesting. And I do believe he's put that in as a... are you saying it's interesting? Why do you think it's interesting?
Me.
Yeah? Did you say it's interesting?
No, not the same thing.
All right. I was intrigued at your insight for a moment. You went, I thought, whoa. What wisdom did you see? There's that thing where Qadi Iyad says as a kid when he said to when he was he landed as a refugee at this place, he sees this guy playing chess who just makes an ordinary move. And he goes, wow, what a move. And the guy becomes intrigued.
What did you see?
What did I do? What wisdom do you see in my actions? So it's like that. So
I was only intrigued by the round numbers.
okay. Okay. I see. Right. So the thing that's actually because he set this up for really children or young people to learn easily and to kind of commit to memory. So it's easy to just go with round numbers. Anyway, so coming back to here, he says moving water to the limb. The question here is it actually necessary to move water to a limb? What if you immerse your limb in the water? It is allowed. And the interesting thing is that from your reading of the Mudawwana, you would understand that it would actually perhaps be permitted as well if there was dalk, like if there was a wiping over. Because there is in the Mudawwana, Imam Malik is being asked about, Ibn al-Qasim is being asked actually about somebody with his feet in like the river. Like he's just, instead of like, obviously he's doing wudu, but he just dips his feet in and just kind of, and then they speak about, well, as long as he wipes over it. But what they don't speak about is, well, trying to get the water to. I don't think that's a necessary condition. I think he's brought that in to just make the numbers round in that sense. وَإِمْرَارُ الْيَدِّ مَعَ صَبِّ الْمَاءِ. See, here again he's brought sabbul ma, which once again problematizes what I've just said, because sabbul ma means pouring of the water. Within the Hanafi madhab, I believe, is it Abu Yusuf who is of that opinion that sabbul ma, pouring water, is necessary to attain purity. You can't. There is a debate within the Hanafi madhab, but generally this is what I'm saying. Although Qadi Iyad has said it isn't generally. Of course, the question comes, well, how would you get to water anyway if it's not being poured? As in, commonly speaking, most people when they're doing wudu, they're not like in rivers. So most people are at home or in a place pouring water over themselves. So speaking from a general perspective, that's how most people are going to do it anyway. But if you are in a river, if you are in a place, well, the main thing is what he said, imrarul yad, that wiping over. So if you kind of like this wiped over, and the wiping, this imrarul yad, which is sometimes referred to as what? What is it referred to it as in the madhab? Muscle. Okay, no. What do they refer to the wiping of the? Dalk, naam, shukran, Sheikh. Dalk, they call it, yeah. The thing with dalk, you see, he hasn't used the word dalk, and I like the fact that he hasn't. Allah, you gotta like the style of the Qadi. Huh? The thing is, dalk actually can mean many things in Arabic. Dalk is dal, lam, kaf, okay? It can mean, like, obviously wiping, but it can mean also kind of like rubbing. Linguistically, it can mean that. Dalk can also it can mean like, if I'm going like this to something, like I'm thoroughly I'm doing dalk. To the extent, even borderline massaging almost. I'm just saying borderline. That it can go to that extent. It can simply mean wiping as well. You see, here this has unfortunately led this one mas'ala, which by the way, not all the Malikiyah have included in their books, this dalk. Many of them did not include dalk. But this dalk or imrarul yad, which I prefer, wiping over of the hand, as he said. Because this dalk has led to so many problems with people sometimes. They've become so obsessive. I don't think I've rubbed it hard enough, and I don't think I've and it becomes like I'm serious, it really gets to people, this whole dalk thing, and they've got to be wary and stay away from OCD, stay away from waswasa. It's very dangerous. And so this is why I don't encourage dalk in that sense. In fact, I discourage dalk in that sense, absolutely, and I believe it's wrong to be like rubbing. That is wrong. Imrarul yad is what is required, is asked. You just wipe over, that's all. A wiping. It's not a rubbing over, it's just a wiping over, okay? So, and Qadi Iyad quite, ingeniously really puts that there. وَالْمَوَالَى مَعَ الذِّكْر. That there is continuity as long as you're aware. So basically, you don't just say, I'm doing wudu. Oh, right, is that an episode of Dexter that's come on? Let me just watch that. And then, right, I was halfway during wudu, and okay, let me just finish off my wudu now. You can't do it like that. There must be continuity. You must carry on. Obviously, it's a bit silly to break it up like that. Unless a person just forgot.
Sorry, what you're doing wuzu on your arms or feet, whatever, and you have mud or something or some dirt on there, then would then rubbing be necessary?
Right, okay, good question. I mean, what do we think, people? What's the verdict?
For mud.
No, you're saying, so basically, let's say you got dirt on you. Right. Okay, no, not najasa. You're not saying like impurity, just... Okay, so let's say... Okay, this... So the thing is, you would wash this off. The thing is, there's a difference, by the way, between cleanliness, as in hygiene, purity, and between ritual purification. There is a difference. There's a huge overlap, but they're not necessarily the same thing. So you could do wudu and not have thoroughly removed everything. You could, right now, imagine, I don't know, imagine you've been doing something, you've got some dirt on your hands, or you got something. You could wash your hands now, and the dirt would kind of come off. But maybe 100% of it hasn't come off. And if you kind of went at it with soap, it would probably come off clearly. There is a difference between hygiene and between wudu. Hygiene is good, but what we're trying to say is for wudu, what is necessary is just that you wash it. If you want to if there's a difference if the dirt or the mud is blocking that actual part. So if you've got a chunk of mud right there, and you finish your wudu and the chunk of mud is still there, right? So obviously that is a problem, naturally. But otherwise, it's not it's up to you. You can wash it just to be clean, but your wudu will be complete as long as water has reached.
You get a lot of these mechanics working in garages. They got oil over them and stuff like that.
Okay, that's an interesting one, because why is what? I don't realise that's isn't that highly flammable. But the thing is that it's
next to
it's you see that's a good question, because oil obviously is like a repellent to water, so it doesn't let water penetrate. Now the thing is, okay, what's the ruling on that? Well, you see, it depends now. If this is, and this is how the Sharia, by obviously will present a default ruling. The default ruling is that you should remove repellents or things which block the access of water. Okay? So for example, obviously if I've got something on, like you said, you've got mud, a chunk of it on there, well, obviously it ain't going to penetrate that. So you need to kind of wash it off. If you've got like oil or something, you wash these things off. Now the question, that's by default, you should be able, water should make skin contact. It should do. That's the default ruling. Now we're going to have a derogation, which is like where you turn away, an exception, okay, where we are exempt from that. That is based on maslaha, on welfare, which is big, by the way, within the school of Medina, that the whole welfare thing is huge. Right, not welfare as in the benefits. I saw a few smiles go, MashaAllah. Imam Malik, huh? He understood the situation.
And white, do you walk through the door?
Attends a big class. We don't have to host this on James Turner Street just to get the welfare thing there. So now, what we mean by welfare is the good, the benefit of the people. So, for example, a mechanic who's constantly working with oil. Now, for him to be constantly removing things thoroughly, and then getting back, and then coming back, and then getting back, may be difficult. Therefore, he just does a reasonable job and he's excused. A person who that is not the case, like it's a one-off, that they just happen to have, they should do a thorough job in removing it. But where people have a constant contact with a particular thing, they are excused. So, for example, they say a woman, they use the example of a woman cooking. And they say, let's say she's, Sheen's face is lit up but with rage. How dare these people oppress.
Sorry, my feminist rage is being released from this.
Cooking? So let's say if she was cooking, obviously, with the husband alongside, husband cooking the sal and the curry, and she was making the chapati. Now the thing is, working with dough, not dough, working, not money. Right, I know what you're thinking, huh? Working with money, huh? Right, so the whole thing about where you have it in a dough form, it can actually get stuck on certain parts of your hand. So it can actually catch into the fine lines of your hand. And now, if you were doing wudu, it may be that you've missed a part because you've got dough stuck in there and stuff like this. So here, perhaps, if, as since Nosheen's sitting right there, in an unusual circumstance or unusual situation, you happen to be repeatedly in the kitchen, which would be completely unexpected and unimaginable, right? Given an ideal world or a normal world, right? So the thing is that if, let's say, because that is a repetitive thing, so therefore the woman would be excused. She wouldn't have to be thoroughly kind of making sure this. Likewise, you could say the same about paint. You could say the same about anybody that is using certain things. Here there is an interesting mas'ala, by the way. I'll drop it in. Right? What the hell? Right? Might as well. So it's the mas'ala of the ring. Okay, because Imam Malik's fatwa, according to certain sources, which is transmitted, is that you don't have to remove the ring. And then in some riwayat he's asked that what if it is tight? And he says, well, even if it's tight, in some rulings. Now this was interesting because it then has been used for takhrij. Takhrij means where you now use a ruling to base another ruling upon it. It's a bit like saying qiyas, if you like, a bit like qiyas. Now, but it's not qiyas because you're not basing it on the ruling. What you're doing is finding the underlying reason. So anyway, coming back, based on this, there have been some rulings recently issued by some ulama. Surprisingly, one from Pakistan, who Maulana Ishaq Saab from Pakhtunkhwa? Faisalabad. Wasn't he from the Pakhtun side?
No.
But Rahimahullah, who's passed away, a very, he's quite prominent, Maulana Ishaq, who had discussed the matter of nail polish. And he had said, surprisingly, you wouldn't think this fatwa would come from Pakistan, would it?
What did he say?
He said, well, it was permissible for women to do wudu with nail polish on, they don't need to remove it. And I can personally totally see that, especially within the Maliki school, based on things like maslaha, welfare, but also based on the practices and the fatwa of the early ulama, like Imam Malik saying, do you need to remove a ring? And him saying no, and the person saying, well, what if it's tight? And when it's tight, it meant that the water couldn't penetrate under it. And he said, well, still no. And so the understanding is, in Islam, when it comes to purification, we have to purify what is the zahir, the apparent. And we don't have to, there is not an emphasis on the batin, what is hidden. This is agreed upon, then the ulama disagree on what is zahir and what is batin. They agree that the hidden does not have to be washed, although they disagree in the application of what is the batin. So they agree when washing the face, for wudu, you don't have to wash the internal mouth, because that is hidden. You don't have to wash the internal eyes. Although Ibn Umar transmitted there was a difference, but the point is that's in ghusl, but generally the ulama say you don't have to wash the eyes. You don't have to wash inside the nose as an obligation for when washing the face, because it's hidden. When washing the feet, the ulama have said you do not need to, it is not an obligation, the Maliki have said, to wash between the toes. It is recommended but not an obligation. Whereas when they said between the fingers, they said it was an obligation, because the fingers are more revealed, like what's between them, as opposed to what's between the toes seems to be more of the batin. Now, based on these understandings, the ulama are saying, well, wait a minute, there seems to be a zahir and a batin. So when the ring is placed, what is under the ring takes the ruling of the batin. Similarly, in this case, nail polish would take the same ruling. Okay, it would become the batin. That is the logic behind it. Although I don't think most people accept that, but I'm just saying that is it. I would endorse the fatwa of Maulana. As in endorsing it, saying, وَكَذَلِكَ, as they stamp it, and it is like that. Likewise. But yeah, I mean, I would say that I do actually believe it's permissible for a woman to do wudu with nail polish on. I don't feel that that would invalidate the wudu. But I do accept that the majority of the ulama don't take that line. But this is what it is based on. And this is when I said that the school of Malik, the school of Medina, is real big on things like welfare, on benefits. But the benefits of the people. Maslaha. So,
nail polish is fine. What about, obviously not the topic, what about ghusl? Say the same?
The thing is that really you would say the same. It would, if it took the ruling of the batin, it would take the ruling of the batin. It would be silly to distinguish between ghusl and wudu. If it's the batin, it's the batin. Just as, you see, what's interesting is when he said, as Qadi Iyad said, that reaching the inside of the hair, he only put it as a sunnah when it came to ghusl. Because, according to him, his understanding, it was from the batin. In ghusl, that is. And obviously in wudu you only do masah anyway. So hence women not being required to, get right to the roots with water and stuff like this. Or even men who had braided hair and stuff like this.
Wasn't there a fatwa from Imam Malik where he said that a woman who just got married and done up her hair shouldn't have to wash it?
There is, it's not from but it's in the Maliki method. It's a very popular, it's there. They base it upon other fatwa coming from, obviously, the original type of text. I don't think that actual one is in the madhab, but it's a popular opinion within the Maliki madhab that they have said that if a woman was to, because there's customs that where there's a wedding, there's the whole, like you'd say now, bridal makeup. Yeah, so there's this whole thing. Now, I'm not sure how long bridal makeup lasts, but I haven't had it done recently, so so it's been a while now. So the thing is, if now in some customs, in some cultures, they had this thing about doing the hair in a particular way, and they would spend a certain amount of money on that, and it was like a spectacular thing. Now, if the woman was to wash her hair, that would just be ruined. And they have, like the celebration, like the walima and so on, like I know it goes on for one day, but in some it's not like haram to, for example, continue celebrating for a few days. In some cultures, they actually celebrate for a few days, and you could say maybe in many cultures actually people still continue to come and visit, but except some people do more of a display of it, and other people probably do less of a display of it. So in some cultures, for several days, like the bride would, make sure she's kind of like done up, had that thing, meeting guests and doing this and doing that. So the question was, well, if she was to just wash her hair, it would kind of ruin all of that. All that money would be wasted and the whole thing. So the fatwa, as transmitted, and this is in the main popular books of the Maliki Madhab, you'd see this within, I believe, the Suqi and these other hashiyat, and it's in al-Fiqh al-Maliki wa Dillatu, transmitted from the Madhab, that it is not necessary for the woman to wash her hair. She's exempt if she wants. Once again, just you can see the play of maslaha within the madhab. You can see how big the madhab is on making sure that the welfare of people is maintained and watched out for. It's not like sometimes some of the other madhabs in that regard. It's very, like flexible in the sense of saying, look, people shouldn't be at a loss. Okay, so that's an interesting fatwa, I must say. No.
So, Sheikh, if she's wearing a wig, would she have to take the wig off?
Not a barrister's wig, I take it.
No, whatever. But does she have to take the wig off and hair, or can she do it on there?
Well, you mean she's bald?
Yeah, it could be bald or maybe a blonde for a weekend.
Whatever.
So they do wear hair pieces and stuff.
Oh, you mean like hair extensions?
Yeah. No, I'm not too sure putting something over the head. It's actually normal hair. So
What's the question? Like, does she have to take the thing off and do...
And then proper hair underneath.
And do ghusl, or wash the head?
Wash the head.
I mean, the question would come back to the element of difficulty.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, like, I don't know how difficult it would be to remove and replace this wig. Is it like, if it's just like take it off and put it back on? Or is it like a...
actually glued on.
Are they like glued on?
Yeah,
Some are glued on and they're like...
Yeah, so if they're like, like, because...
I think... Yeah, hold on.
Right, so as I'm randomly read in an article sometime, right, that some of these wigs are like glued on. If they are glued on, and it would cause problems for it to be washed, that it may actually damage it, or it may damage like, let's say, for example, someone for a particular, let's say, medical condition, she has to wear a wig, and it's glued on that she can't take. If she does, and if she damages it, she goes every, I don't know, fortnight and gets it kind of replaced or whatever. In that sense, there would be these would be extenuating circumstances which would allow her to avoid washing the hair, if that was the case, because the maslaha would count. If it wasn't, then it's the same. It comes back to how much difficulty and inconvenience has it caused, or will it cause this whole action? Because, I mean, if it would cause...
What about us with wax and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Wax up the hair again.
No, good try though, but don't try, don't get, that's the thing.
So you
But,
roll them.
You said it's relative, isn't it? Hardship.
yeah,
Hardship relative.
it is relative, you're
We need
right.
to get it-
There are a lot of relatives bring hardship with them. They are an embodiment of hardship, yes.
The reason is that
Yeah.
depends on the level of hardship.
Yeah.
That's relative, because I don't like getting my hair wet. For me, that's a hardship.
Right, okay, there's a difference between hardship as in and between an anomalous type of preference, in the sense that a person's going to say, I just don't like this, it is uncomfortable for me, like I don't like washing my hair, right, or I just don't like washing my face, or I don't like doing this. This is just, this is obviously, that would be unacceptable. You're right, there is undoubtedly an undeniable amount of subjectivity, that it's personal, that the person would decide. But at the same time, it must be reasonable to others. Okay? Like generally perceived as reasonable. So people would accept that, let's say you had an injury or you spoke of this case, people may not be in that situation, but they would accept that, like being in that situation, I can understand the ease. So people, I don't like washing my face. Well, people wouldn't generally understand that and recognize it as a reasonable response. So even though there is that subjectivity there isn't that intersubjectivity. Allahu Akbar. Let's, where are we? ومسنوناته عشر.
وسنته 10 غسل اليدين قبل إدخالهما الإناء والمضمضة والاستنشاق والاستنثار ومسح الأذنين وتجديد الماء لهما والاقتصار على مسحة واحدة في الرأس ورد اليدين فيها فيمر بيديه من المقدم إلى قفاه ثم يرجع إلى مقدم رأسه والترتيب وغسل البياض الذي بين الصدغ والأذن وقيل فرد وقيل لا يغسل.
Right, okay. Let's inshallah get through these. Masnunat, the sunan are 10, that washing the hands before placing them into the bowl. This was obviously if you're doing wudu from a bowl. Madmada, rinsing the mouth. Istinshaq, cleaning the nose. Wal istinthar, that's both like taking water in, cleaning the nose. Mashul udhnain, wiping of the ears. Renewing water for that. So if you're renewing water, then wiping the ears. والاقتصار على مسحة واحدة في الرأس, having only one wipe when it comes to the head, like as in not 3 times like the Shafi'i madhab. So and obviously bringing the hand back, so you've taken the hand there, you've brought it back. فيمر بيديه من المقدم إلى كفاه ثم يرجع إلى مقدم رأسه. He just explained the procedure, take it to the back, bring it back. Tartib, sequence. Sequence is not an obligation, it is a sunnah. So the fact that you begin with the hands and then you do this and this and the face and then you go on to this and you go on to and you finish with the feet, this is a sequence. This is not necessary. So if a person did begin with their feet, let's say for some reason, let's say you found yourself in an uncomfortable place where you had to do wudu and you're thinking, well, I don't want to be caught with my foot in the sink, right? Like having to do this. So, but nobody's here right now. Why don't I just quickly wash my feet first? Because I know somebody might come in. You can actually do that. You can actually just wash your feet first if you felt uncomfortable to that, like you thought, bloody hell, somebody might, and then do the rest of your wudu. It would not invalidate your wudu. Okay, so is mentioned, okay, washing what is between the ears there. So, yep, that's it, inshallah. So, فضائله 10.
وفضائله 10 السواك قبله والتسمية أوله وتكراره إلى 3 والمبالغة في الاستنشاق لغير الصائم والبداءة في مسح الرأس مقدمه والتيامن.
Right.
والتقلل من صب الماء وجعل الإناء على يمينه وذكر الله تعالى أثناء وتخليل أصابع رجليه.
Right, it's virtues 10 again. You can see round numbers all the way. Using miswak, miswak before, or siwak, however you want to call it. Tasmiyah at the beginning, saying Bismillah. Generally, the Maliki have said it's only Bismillah. It's not even Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Although you can say Bismillah Rahman Rahim as well. You washing up to 3 times. Being, you know where it says like rinsing the mouth excessively. Not excessively as in excessively, but just doing like thoroughly is a better word as opposed to excessively. Like thoroughly, like as in, and this also comes back to hygiene. Just being hygienic. And people should do that anyway. So, and you can see this, and this is why the whole thing about the miswak, the whole siwak before, fresh breath, keeping this type of stuff, having that. And they mention لغير الصائم, for the person not fasting. That's because just in case they end up swallowing whatever the water and so on. Having said that, I know this is completely irrelevant, but we do believe that if a person was fasting, there is no problem in doing things like brushing their teeth or stuff like this, you know, keeping your breath fresh and stuff like that. وَالْبَدَاءَ فِي مَسْحِ الرَّأْسِ بِمُقَدَّمِ. It mentions once again beginning from the front of the head when you're wiping the head and going to the back. And تَقَلُّلْ مِنْ صَبِّ الْمَاءِ, using a less amount of water, not wasting water basically, which is clearly from the sunnah, not to kind of be extravagant in things. Placing the pot, this is if you're doing wudu from the pot, on the right hand side. This, obviously, he's just mentioning this from like a virtuous type of thing. It's not really something, it's not like a major thing, it's not a major issue if you had it in front of you. Dhikrullahi ta'ala athna'ah, mentioning Allah throughout. Now this is interesting, he's mentioned this, because generally the Malikiyah say that there is no specific dhikr during wudu. And they don't actually recognize any dhikr during the wudu. In fact, they don't even recognize, a lot of them, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim at the beginning. So it's only the word Bismillah. And some have allowed ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So this is interesting that Qadi Iyad mentions that what exactly did he mean when he said that. He doesn't expand upon it, which is unfortunate, but he just says that mentioning Allah throughout, within, that's what it says. Now, تخليل أصابع رجليه, and once again washing in between the toes. This is a virtuous act. It's not something which is obligatory, and you see that once again it's not obligatory because it's from the batin. نعم. ومكروهاته
عشر الإكثار من صب الماء فيه والزيادة على الثلاث في مغسوله وعلى الواحدة في ممسوحه والوضوء في الخلاء والكلام فيه بغير ذكر الله عز وجل والاقتصار على مرة لغير العالم وتخليل اللحية والوضوء بما قد توضأ به والوضوء من إناء ولغ فيه كلب والوضوء من الماء المشمس والوضوء من أواني الذهب والفضة وقيل في هذا حرام.
Allah Akbar. Right, okay, so the discouraged acts. Now, once again, pouring an excessive amount of water, just like flooding yourself, obviously. Do you know, this is approximately, you put two hands together, put two hands together. Right. Reasonably, generously close. Not like that, but just generously, as in, you know, they're quite, a bit spaced out, but a bit close. Now, a bit in an, like almost like a bowl shape.
Ameen.
Yeah? Ameen. Like as though it's dua. Now say, repeat after me. Allah ke naam pe de de baba. That's what a lot of people, when begging, say, right? But the thing is, you can see this amount that's there, that is approximately a mud. Now just look at it. That is what the Prophet ﷺ would approximately use for his entire wudu. A mud. So just think about that. Okay, so the thing is, the excessive amount that people use is not from the sunnah. Right, okay, going beyond 3 in your, like I said, is, here he's mentioned discouraged. Many of the ulama have said discouraged. Other people, based on the apparent of the hadith, some have even said haram. But the thing is, it is something which is reprehensible, because it leads to all these other problems. وَعَلَى الْوَاحِدَ فِي مَمْسُوحِ, where you wipe, as in over the head, you only wipe once. Doing wudu in the bathroom. This actually doesn't apply necessarily to our bathrooms. Okay, just to be very clear. When they say khala, they were specific about the toilet. And their toilets weren't even, and today, because toilets and bathrooms are kind of one thing, and then toilets are very, they're not like, you know, it's not something which is, it's, you know, the toilet is there and the sink is there. It's not like, you know, they don't really mix in that sense. It's not like a small little room in which there's like a hole in the floor and, you know, people are using this place and somebody, you know, there's a chance that there's, you know, impurities all around on the floor, and now the fact that you're adding more water may splash it back on you and stuff like this. So our situation is very different to those. Obviously, if you find yourself in a situation like that I've just described, right, then in that case, obviously feel free to avoid
back the next day.
Right.
Isn't there a hadith about being reprehensible, urinating water?
There is, in stagnant water.
So, which is basically a toilet, isn't it?
Good insight. Good insight. But not I like the way, I like from a legal perspective the way you've, that's good actually, because technically I suppose you're right from one angle, the water is stagnant. However, stagnant water is speaking about general stagnant water that is for use, and that too for public use. Obviously the whole purpose of that water in the toilet is to facilitate the fact that you do urinate there and so on. And it's actually for that purpose. It's not, whereas if you went to a puddle somewhere which maybe animals are coming to and drinking from, or other people, it may not even be that. It may be that people just come and, I don't know, people maybe jumping in this puddle, maybe kids jumping in this puddle. There may be other things. So the point is, if you just go and urinate in stagnant water, that is reprehensible. So, but I like the so,
Good influences are rubbing off from somewhere.
so right. So the thing is, yep, kalam fihi bighayri dhikrillah. Now this in general, right? You see, my understanding, because this could refer to two things. It could be referring to fihi as in the wudu, or it could be referring to, which is more likely, in the khala, in the toilet. The thing is, according to the Maliki madhab, it is permissible to to mention the name of Allah or do dhikr within a toilet. It is not haram. And they've actually are very sound in what they say. There's a difference in during the act of relieving yourself. It's not permissible to be mentioned in the name of Allah. Not within the toilet, which is a separate thing altogether. Because the question then is, well, what makes a toilet the toilet? Because if you've got a small room, like let's say a small closet room, which is a toilet. Let's say somebody's got now a toilet the size of this room. Now if you knock out some of these walls and all of this extended thing is the toilet. So does that mean now when you walk in from there you still can't do... And what about if you decide to go to relieve yourself in the open somewhere? At what point does that become the toilet? So it's quite nonsensical to say, oh, when you're in the toilet you can't do the dhikr of Allah, because what does the toilet actually mean? Oh, it means, oh, you just put a door there and all of a sudden you go. So it's okay to say, well, okay, whilst you're relieving yourself, that makes sense. But to say the toilet, like most of the other schools of law have said, has been a bit nonsensical. Okay, so, right, okay, that said, what did he say? Yeah, just washing your limb only once is discouraged for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, so they won't do a thorough job. You see, the interesting thing is he mentions here takhlilul lihya, which is interesting, isn't it? Because he mentions like for people to actually penetrate their beard with water is actually discouraged. Although there are that, which is actually a view within the Maliki madhab. The Imam Malik actually discouraged it. And then there are other views which sometimes are more popularized, that no, it's recommended to kind of do takhleel, but it's not obligatory. Takhleel is when you kind of take your fingers through.
The reason for the discouragement?
Sorry?
Why the contradiction?
I mean, there's different riwayat. The reason for saying, well, you don't need to, because that is the batin. And are you just being excessive in trying to do something which you've not been asked to do? Like you just go with the zahir, which is this. So why are you trying to like get in there and do this? That's that angle. Although the general, to be fair, the general transmission, general books will say it's recommended. But I'm just saying he seems to have chosen this one. Now, obviously doing water from using water for wudu, which a dog has actually drank from, is discouraged in the Maliki madhab. Using water which is mushammas, in the sense that it's been left to kind of heat up by the sun. This is actually quite weak, this angle. This the ulama have said, has he brought the thing here? This, you know what, a lot of the ulama that said this was discouraged was because of medical reasons that they felt in their day and age were medical reasons. Obviously in time they uncovered that it wasn't actually medically harmful, or so I believe. I say that and I do wudu with my mushammas and dropped it. I go, and now we've uncovered there's no harm in that. Hold down, I should have listened. Right, so the thing is that, so that was more medical reason. People felt that it kind of, water which is left to heat in the sun, they somehow felt that it kind of triggers vitiligo and stuff like this. I don't know where. Obviously, I know today what they call baras in Arabic. I know vitiligo. They don't still know the causes to like they just say it could just be stress and it could just be
What
random.
is vitiligo, sorry?
So, it's vitiligo they call it, isn't it? What do they call it? The whole, the white patches which spread across people. So they get this the deep pigmentation of the skin. So, and there's all these theories about eating fish and drinking milk and doing all that, which is common amongst Pakistanis, isn't it? That's a common one. But the point is that they've got many theories around. They call that like baras in Arabic, and that one of the theories for that is like, was it like using water that has been left to become stale by the sun, and maybe that. I mean, obviously, as that's not proven, this doesn't really stand. Then there's the thing of using gold or silver type of vessels, golden or silver vessels, actual gold and actual silver vessels, right, which for wudu is forbidden, or at the very least discouraged.
Oh God.
Right. Right, so the thing is, at the very least is discouraged, and the reason being that the Prophet ﷺ forbade using these as because they're obviously luxurious, like trying to say, look, to drink from something golden, by the way, you're not allowed. All right, you're not allowed to have real gold cups or glasses to kind of drink from. So
What is that?
it is prohibited in the hadith, that's why. And so that's it really, it's just because it's in the hadith.
Sorry, that pigment thing that you mentioned, it's actually mentioned in Imam Suyuti's book about eating fish and drinking milk. It's actually mentioned in there that you shouldn't actually combine the two.
I know, I think Imam Suyuti obviously was a bit keen on the medical side, wasn't he? They've discovered a few more things after. no, mashallah, no, he does. But many people have mentioned that back then, because there was this understanding that this is what it was, but it wasn't necessarily. I mean, people say it's not. Things like it's not drink. So there's the famous grammatical saying la ta'kul. What is it? What is it? They say la ta'kul as-samak wa tashrab al-halib, and the whole thing about what does wa here mean. Okay. So, what do you? Okay. The Malikiya might just eat it. So, okay, with that actually, we've reached the end of this section. Right, so inshallah, we'll kind of leave that, bi'ithnillah. Inshallah.